We're here today at the Pan Am Museum, and we are at the cradle of aviation in beautiful Long Island, New York. And joining us now is Linda. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
This is so exciting. What a beautiful moment this is today to be able to see all of the fantastic things that you've curated. Tell us about the Pan Am Museum.
Well, the Pan Am Museum was founded by a group of us all former Pan Am employees, Pan Am flight attendants to be specific, and the first full year of operation was 2016, but the foundation was formed in 2015. And it really was coincidental that we were asked to find a plaque that is on Port Washington, and a lot of people don't know that the first transatlantic flight was on Pan Am in 1939 from Port Washington, New York to Marseille, France. So we went down to the harbor to take a picture of the plaque and send it to a colleague of ours in Paris so that they could commemorate the 75th anniversary and commensurate their own plaque in Marseille. But as we stood there and wondered, why isn't there a museum, a testament to all Pan Am had accomplished in over 64 years of aviation firsts? So we established a museum.
I love that. So it all just started by a conversation and a little tiny plaque.
A little tiny plaque, yes, is the impetus for this.
What are three things that our audience should know about Pan Am and their contributions to our world?
Well, I think Pan Am and Juan Trippe, the founder of the airline, are synonymous in that he was an entrepreneur but a visionary. Really, Pan Am established so many firsts in the technology advancement of aircraft development, of route development. Similar to perhaps a moon launching, Pan Am's accomplishments with the first trans-Pacific flight in 1935 and the first transatlantic flight in 1939.
And prior to that, that's not how people were traveling.
No. If you think about the first flight of Charles Lindbergh across the Atlantic was only 10 years before.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So the evolution and development and really the boundaries that Juan Trippe pushed in order to be able to conquer the Pacific and crossing thousands of miles of ocean, it was unheard of. It was absolutely unheard of.
What is another significant contribution?
Well, for me personally, was the development of the 747, which was my aircraft that I called my home away from home. It was my magic carpet ride around the world. But Pan Am was instrumental in the development and the launch. It was the launch carrier for the 747 in 1970. The inaugural flight of the 747 was at JFK in January of 1970 from New York to London.
It's amazing when you think back to that. Was it that it was just a larger aircraft? What was it about that 747 that made it so significantly cool?
Well, it depends, I guess, on who you're talking to. From a passenger's perspective,
right,
it was a marvelous aircraft. It was comfortable. You felt like you were in a home. You felt like you were in a large hotel. You weren't walking onto an airplane. And the seats at the time were pretty spaced. You had a nice amount of leg room.
Okay.
For me, it was just a lot of room to, you know, we did cook back in those days on the aircraft. We had meals, even in economy. We had a great service up on first class. It was a cart service, and for a first class passenger, it was an incredible service, kind of like dining in a five-star restaurant.
Lovely.
The menus were developed by Maxime's in Paris, and we would cook a Chateaubriand, cooked to order. There was a caviar service, you know, champagne and wines flowing throughout the flight. If you were a pilot, you loved the technology. You loved sitting up on the second story of a building and all the planes that were beneath you. So there was the technical ability of the aircraft that was second to none. There's a reason why it's the most successful aircraft in aviation history, being in service more than 50 years.
It's interesting what I've learned so far, just in a few minutes, just going through the museum itself. You know, aviation first, right?
Aviation first.
Then the 747. And what's one other contribution that Pan Am has made?
People might not understand it, but diplomacy.
Okay.
Pan Am was always at the hand of the U.S. government as far as the pivotal role it played in World War II, which is largely unknown, in that Pan Am's participation with not only aircraft but personnel really helped turn the tide in favor of the Allies, both in the Pacific Ocean War as well as in supplying, doing the air route supplies to the Atlantic, to the UK. But we did what we called evacuation flights and missions of mercy around the world. During perhaps some of the most well understood or well known is the what was called Operation Baby Lift. And next year we're going to be celebrating 50 years of Operation Baby Lift, and that was the evacuation in 1975 of Amerasian orphans from South Vietnam. We helped in the evacuation of over 30,000 children out of...
Over 30,000 children?
Yes.
Pan Am helped.
The Pan Am helped. Pan Am had started the evacuation process actually 2 years before the official Operation Baby Lift in 1975.
Okay.
But we were evacuating children from the orphanages starting in 1972. Flight attendants would volunteer their time to go to Saigon and to escort, if you will, a couple of babies and bring them home and bring them back to the United States to the loving arms of an adoptive family.
And we just don't think about that when you think of Pan Am. And I think what is wonderful about your museum is the fact that you decided that you didn't want Pan Am to just be a footnote in some textbook. That you and your friends got together and decided, you know what, there's a story that should be shared, and it should be in a very engaging, informative, celebratory way.
Absolutely. We knew we needed to provide something tangible as to this incredible history. Not only the incredible aviation first, but the service elements. As you can see in the museum, the fine china, people don't understand. There's a lot of children that come to the museum and they look at the fine china and they look at the images of the food that we would cook on board the airplane, and they're just stunned. You actually cooked food on the airplane? And most people don't understand how we did that. But we had cooking ovens on the airplane. It was an incredible presentation and something I'm immensely proud of, being a part of that, and that we provided service that's now duplicated in other airlines when they try to do a superior premium service.
Yes.
Emirates, the chairman of Emirates Airlines, actually said when he founded Emirates, his role model was Pan Am and Juan Trippe. He needed to follow suit in what they had put in place. And Juan Trippe's vision was always to put a steamer in the air with premium passenger service.
And that's how it was.
And that's how it was.
Yes.
Everything was first class. Of course, you know, with aviation in the last century, economy class really, or cabin class, didn't even evolve until about the 1950s, you know, with the Stratocruiser airplanes. But even before the 747, Pan Am led the way with aircraft development. With the launch of the jet age, Pan Am again was the launch carrier of the 707 in 1958, again with a flight from JFK, which was then called Idlewild, and it was from New York's airport to Paris, France. So there's a lot of history. Pan Am was also instrumental in the development of the first pressurized cabin, which was the Stratocruiser. We flew the Stratocruiser, and it was a derivative of an aircraft, a land aircraft used during World War II. Prior to World War II, though, Pan Am had worked with Boeing on the B-314 flying boats, which were really considered some of the most romantic ways to fly. Claire Booth Luce had flown on it and said one day it'll be remembered as the most romantic voyage. It really touched people, and it made significant impact. There were movies made about it. You know,
well, speaking of romance, you speak like 3 languages, right?
I do.
So was that fun for you when you were up in flight to be able to have different conversations with people?
Oh, absolutely. Flying in those days was actually kind of like a party in flight.
Okay.
There was a lot of socializing. You know, in the pods today, people don't have that opportunity. They're kind of focused on their screens. But back then, we were out in the cabins talking to everybody. We were interacting with them. I loved having any opportunity to use my French language or Spanish or my Italian and be able to converse and get to know somebody. And we did have a lot of people that would frequent Pan Am flights. If I operated London for a month, I might see the same people over and over again. It seems kind of funny, but you know, back in those days, there really weren't private jets. So celebrities, politicians, statesmen, they flew on Pan Am because we went everywhere.
Speaking of going everywhere, and there's like this resurgence of love, if you will. There's like a podcast now that you have a lot of fans. So tell us about that.
We do. We're very proud of our Pan Am podcast program. It was launched, it'll be 3 years ago in August. And the host of our podcast is one of our board members, Tom Betty. And we have launched the program. I think we've got about 49 episodes to date, and they've been downloaded over 200,000 times in 161 countries around the world. It's just such a testament to the strength of this brand, and I really don't know any other company that's been out of business for over 30 years that still resonates and has such significance.
With all of those downloads, that's quite impressive that Tom has done that and started it. And I guess you're always looking for different guests or people from different countries that might even want to call in possibly to talk about their memories?
Yeah, sure. We get inquiries all the time from people that saying, I have a Pan Am story to tell. And we're always open to those possibilities. When Tom and I are talking about subjects or different topics to cover in Pan Am history, you know, we always say, we're never running out of stories to tell, because it's just amazing how many, for every person that ever worked for the airline, there's a story.
Speaking of that, what is the most, for you personally, what is the most incredible story that you remember?
I guess the one that comes to mind first is a chance encounter I had with a celebrity who's famous for wearing sunglasses.
Ah.
I was going to the airport for one of my flights, and I was coming from the city and had my uniform, my wheels on, and I was coming out of my apartment. And on the corner outside of my apartment was this very large stretch limousine park, and it was parked on the corner. And on the top of the roof of the limousine was a pair of sunglasses. And I was like, okay, somebody left their sunglasses on the roof, and they're going to drive off, and they're going to forget. So I grabbed the sunglasses, tapped on the window, and the window rolls down, and staring me in the face was Rod Stewart.
Wow.
And I kind of went, oh, hi. Handed him his sunglasses, and he said, thank you very much. And the window rolled back up. He went on his merry way. I went on my way. And so I took my bus to the airport, and by chance, I was working a flight to London that night.
Are you kidding me, Linda?
I'm not kidding you. And I'm standing at the boarding door, and here coming down the jetway is none other than Rod Stewart.
Yay! That deserves applause.
And I kind of laughed, and he kind of looked at me because he wasn't
Right.
sure where to place me. It was like I was out of context. And then he got closer, and then I looked at him, and I said, welcome aboard, Mr. Stewart. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and I said, you could have at least offered me a ride.
Wow.
And he just laughed. But we had a great flight the rest of the way then to London, and joked about it. But
what a great moment of serendipity, that like every moment in your life and every moment in his life led up to that, and then a secondary experience.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculously
It's so
funny.
connected,
I think
yes.
that's a good screenplay. That should turn into a good screenplay.
There's a movie there somewhere.
There's definitely a movie there somewhere. Speaking of monumental things, there's also, well, you've got a gala coming up, but also, isn't there like a transatlantic flight happening?
There is.
Okay, what is that?
We're very proud of this. A private tour company in the UK approached us back in 2019, and they're Bartlings, which they operate private jet tours. And they've partnered with a U.S. travel-based travel agency called Criterion to offer this kind of once-in-a-lifetime, which I thought was the once-in-a-lifetime, but it's become very popular, reenactment, a commemorative flight of the 1939 first Pan Am transatlantic flight. So they are on a 757, so it's going to be a modern aircraft with 50 lie-flat seats, offering this kind of very special flight, retracing Pan Am's northern and southern Atlantic routes. Initially, the flight was going to depart probably in 2020, but we kind of all know what happened in 2020.
So a little postponed.
So the pandemic kind of delayed this, but back in 2022, they got back into the process of working on the flight. The flight is scheduled now to depart June 27th, 2025.
Wow.
They launched promotion and ticket sales, I'm going to say about 3-4 weeks ago. The flight sold out in 10 days. And the tickets are not cheap.
Okay.
They're
but there's a lot of
60,000.
value there. There's a lot of value for the people that are
Incredible value.
lucky enough to be able to go.
And again,
So-
it's a testament to the strength of this brand that, 30 years after its demise, is still popular. It still resonates with people.
Now tell us about your gala that's coming up.
Yes, we have a annual fundraiser gala every year, and this year the gala is on October 5th, and we are celebrating a very special anniversary. It is the 60th anniversary of Pan Am bringing the Beatles to the United States. We have a fantastic Beatles tribute band called Strawberry Fields that will be playing, and we also have a very special keynote speaker, Sam Donaldson, who was the chief White House correspondent for ABC News, but he was also a frequent Pan Am passenger. Whenever Air Force One used to fly. Pan Am flew what was called the Presidential Press Charter flights. We carried the press that accompanied all the Air Force One flights around the world. And so Sam Donaldson was a frequent passenger on our Presidential Press Charter flights. And he knew Pan Am pretty well. So we're very honored to have him as our keynote speaker this year.
I'm very excited because we will be in attendance. It's going to be a wonderful evening.
Yes.
And people can fly in from anywhere around the world to attend.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a great night, a really worthwhile night. And what days is this museum open? How can people come here in person?
The museum is open from Tuesday to Sunday, 10 to 5. And you can buy admission in advance online. You can buy your admission at the front door when you walk in. But it's a great place, you know, for obviously the Pan Am exhibits that we have here, which we encourage everybody to come visit, but also because the Cradle of Aviation itself is a wonderful Long Island museum.
It certainly is.
Testament to really the evolution of, the rich evolution of history on Long Island in aviation.
Well, I thank you, Linda, for inviting us here today. I know I've been wanting to visit with you for such a while now, so you know, timing's everything, and today was the day.
Terrific.
So thank you very much for allowing us this behind-the-scenes glimpse at your wonderful museum.
Thank you so much for having me.
Looking forward to knowing you for a long time, and maybe we can go on a flight somewhere. That would
sounds
be great.
like a plan.
Well, thank you for watching. If you love aviation as much as I do and travel, please go to their website, check out more. Pan Am, an American historic, iconic brand. Be well.